In his sports heyday, before launching his career as a solicitor and fathering 9 children, he had been a lot of things. A holder of world records in jumping events, a 6 time AAA champion, and for 10 days in 1906, an Olympic athlete and double medalist. But one thing he was not ever was a Brit. He was an Irishman, full stop, and no one was ever going to convince him that that was the same thing. So while he had been thrilled to earn a spot on the Olympic podium, he was not simply going to stand there and smile as they raised the Union Jack behind him, because that wasn't his country's flag. Fortunately, he had come prepared for just such an occasion. What he did next would serve as a rallying cry for his countrymen for decades to come. Today is Tuesday, November 11th, and this week in 1957, Peter O'Connor, the man known as the Irish Antelope and the first ever Olympic political protester, died at 85 at his home in Waterford, halfway between Dublin and Cork on the eastern coast of Ireland. I'm your host, Running Up That Hillary, and you are listening to Today in Running History. It is once again Tat Tuesday, which means that this episode is sponsored by My Race Tats, the temporary tattoos with motivational sayings that I wear for literally all of my races. The most recent of those races was the Indy Monumental Half Marathon this past weekend, where I ended up running a PR. And of course, while I was doing so, I was wearing a tattoo from My Race Tats on my inner wrist. For that race, I chose one that says Ponte las pilas, which is Spanish and translates literally to put your batteries in, but means more along the lines of come on, shape up, pull yourself together, get going. Basically, it is a phrase of encouragement that we haven't been able to fully capture in English quite yet. But, anyways, I raced hard, and every time I felt like quitting, I was reminded by my tattoo to keep it together and to finish strong. Check out all the Spanish language tattoos and the English ones for that matter at the link in the episode description. And listeners of Today in Running History always save 20% by using my code Hillary at checkout. Now, before we can get into Peter O'Connor's political statement, I want to clarify that yes, I did say that this happened at the 1906 Olympics. If you've never heard of those games, you are not alone. Also known by the catchy title of the Intercalated Games, the 1906 Olympics were organized in part to commemorate the 10-year anniversary of the first modern Olympics. Held in Athens, the event featured nearly 900 athletes from 20 countries and were the first games to feature opening and closing ceremonies, as well as a shorter duration than the months-long Olympics that came before and after. While these games were considered successful and also established many traditions still observed today, they are no longer officially recognized by the IOC. The idea was that these games, always to be held in Athens, would occur between each of the Olympics that were hosted by other cities every 4 years. But the founder of the IOC opposed this plan, wishing instead that the games not be set permanently in any one city. Ultimately, travel difficulties and competing events that took both attention and attendance from the intercalated games led to it being a one-time event. Fortunately for Peter O'Connor and today's story, that event was in 1906. O'Connor had been eligible for the 1900 Olympics but refused to compete on the British team rather than an Irish one and did not go to the 1904 Games because of what sources only refer to as personal difficulties. He was an early member of the Gaelic Athletic Association, founded in 1884, and since childhood, a part of a growing movement in Ireland to gain its independence from Great Britain. Ironically, O'Connor was actually born in England, while his father was on a brief work assignment there. But from day one, his allegiance was to Ireland. As an athlete, he had won his first All-Ireland Championship in 1899 and set his first world record in the long jump in 1901. This became, in fact, the event's first world record as recognized by the International Amateur Athletics Foundation. By the time the 1906 Games came around, O'Connor was a positively elderly 34 years old. He and two other men, Con Leahy and John Daly, made up the entire Irish contingent in 1906, accepting the invitation under the belief that they would be competing for Ireland. Given green blazers, caps with gold shamrocks, and the Éireann go Bragh, or Ireland Forever flag, the men only learned once they'd arrived in Greece that they would be competing for Britain, not Ireland. The men appealed, but because Ireland did not have an Olympic committee of its own, their appeal was denied. If you're thinking that the trio then shrugged, packed away their green and gold flag, and happily went on to win some medals for the Brits, you'd be wrong. O'Connor did win medals, a silver in the long jump and a gold in what was then called the hop, step, and jump, and is now known as the triple jump. His silver was controversial because the only judge for that event was the manager for the American team. Despite O'Connor's protest, this man remained the only official for the event in which an American, either legitimately or otherwise, won the gold. Whatever feelings O'Connor had about his second place finish were put aside in favor of expressing what he felt about Irish home rule. When the Union Jack was raised during the medal ceremony, he and his teammates put their protest plan into action. As 55,000 spectators and members of the international press looked on, Leahy and Daly stood guard while O'Connor shimmied up the 20-foot flagpole and unfurled his green flag with its gold harp and unmistakable message of Irish pride. When he later won the hop, step, and jump, he again waved the Éireann go Bragh flag. O'Connor did not face any repercussions for his protest, which became another rallying cry for Irish people determined to win their independence from Britain, under whose control they had essentially been since the Anglo-Norman invasion of 1169. 12 years after O'Connor's protest, the Irish would lose the Dublin insurrection known as the Easter Rising, but go on to win the Irish War of Independence in 1921. But as anyone with even a passing knowledge of this conflict knows, that certainly did not mark the end of things. Within Ireland, those who desired independence and those who remained loyal to Britain battled for decades, both literally and figuratively, throughout the 20th century, culminating in the 1998 Good Friday Agreement that established peace in Northern Ireland. Today, Northern Ireland remains part of the UK, and per the agreement will do so until and unless a majority of its citizens wish for that to change. The rest of the island, 23 of 29 counties, makes up what we now know simply as Ireland, and is an independent entity. After the one-and-done intercalated games of 1906, O'Connor continued to compete but never again returned to the Olympics as an athlete. Over the course of his career, he won 28 Irish titles and was a founding member of the Waterford Athletic Club. Now in its 106th year, his law firm, O'Connor and Son, still operates offices in Waterford and Dublin today. That is all I have for y'all. Thank you so much for listening. Please make sure to like, subscribe, comment, share, rate 5 stars, tattoo the logo on your forehead, etc. And speaking of tattoos, it is Tattoosday, so check out the link to my race stats in the episode description and use my code Hillary at checkout. Then join me next time for a conversation with one of the best British marathoners of all time. I'm your host, Running Up That Hillary, and this has been Today in Running History. Now, before we get into Peter O'Connor's political statement, I want to clarify that yes, I did say that this happened at the 1906 Olympics. Damn it. Who is calling me? Hold on. Okay, that was my son calling me, so he's forgiven. He's allowed to call me. No one else is. Okay. I don't even know where I started, where I stopped. This became, in fact, the event's first world record. First world record. Dang it. O'Connor was positively elderly at 80. No, he wasn't 84. That would be elderly. Actually, that would make this an even better story. This 84-year-old goes and gets gold medals. Okay. This became, in fact, the world's first... Okay, I'm just not going to pause this time every time I bring this up. Whatever still operates offers... Why? This is the last sentence before the outro and I can't even get through it.